You ever notice how sometimes the smallest thing can unravel the biggest secrets? For me, it all started with a single missing package, nothing special, just a book I'd ordered online. But that one lost delivery set off a chain of events I never could have imagined. Because what began as a minor annoyance eventually exposed a neighbor who thought she was untouchable and brought federal agents right to our quiet suburban street. It was late summer when I first realized something was wrong. At first, I blamed the shipping company. A tracking number showed my package was delivered, but my mailbox was empty. Annoying, sure, but not unheard of. Packages get misplaced. Maybe the carrier left it at the wrong house. But then it happened again. And again. Over the span of a month, I lost 3 different deliveries, each one marked as successfully delivered. By the 4th incident, suspicion began to creep in. I started talking to other neighbors, casually asking if their mail had gone missing, too. To my surprise, several said yes. Small things, letters, magazines, even bills, were vanishing without a trace. Some chalked it up to bad luck. Others blamed the post office, but something about the pattern felt off. That's when I noticed her. Karen, the self-appointed queen of our homeowners association. She wasn't just a neighbor, she was a force of control, the type who policed everyone's lawn height and left passive-aggressive notes about trash cans left out too long. But lately, I'd seen her hanging around the mailboxes more often than usual. Sometimes in the morning, sometimes late at night. She always had an excuse, just checking my mail or making sure the boxes are secure. One evening, I stayed in my car a little longer after pulling into the driveway. And there she was, fiddling with the communal mailbox cluster, not opening her own compartment. Oh no, she was peeking at others. When she noticed me watching, she froze, then waved in this awkward, forced way before hurrying back to her house. My gut told me something wasn't right. I decided to test it. The next day, I mailed myself a letter, a blank envelope, no return address, something meaningless. The tracking confirmed delivery, but when I checked my mailbox, it was gone. That was the moment I knew. Someone was stealing our mail. And all signs pointed to Karen. But accusing her without proof? That was risky, especially with her reputation for stirring trouble. If I went after her and I was wrong, I'd never hear the end of it. I needed evidence. I needed someone who could investigate this properly. And that's when I learned about the postal inspector. When most people think of federal agents, they picture the FBI or maybe the DEA. But what I didn't know then, and what Karen definitely didn't expect, is that the U.S. Postal Inspection Service is one of the oldest federal law enforcement agencies in the country. And when it comes to mail theft, they don't mess around. I contacted the post office first, explaining that my packages and letters kept disappearing. The clerk listened patiently, then leaned in slightly and asked, "Do you suspect someone might be taking your mail?" I hesitated before saying her name out loud. "Karen, my neighbor." The clerk didn't seem surprised. Instead, she quietly handed me a card with a number on it. "Call the inspector," she said. "They'll handle it." A week later, he showed up. Inspector Daniels, middle-aged, sharp suit, the kind of presence that fills a room without trying. He introduced himself politely, but with an edge of authority that made me realize this wasn't just some small neighborhood squabble anymore. This was federal business. We sat at my kitchen table while I explained everything, the missing deliveries, the neighbors' complaints, the suspicious late-night mailbox visits. Daniels didn't interrupt, just scribbled notes in a small pad. When I finished, he looked up and asked one simple question. "Would you be willing to help us set a trap?" My heart skipped. A trap? This was turning into something out of a crime show, but I nodded. Absolutely. The plan was straightforward but clever. Daniels and his team would place what they called a test piece in the mailbox, an envelope fitted with a tiny GPS tracker. If anyone removed it illegally, the device would instantly alert the inspectors, who would be monitoring from nearby. For the next 2 days, I pretended everything was normal. Karen continued her routine, patrolling the neighborhood like the self-appointed sheriff. I caught her glaring at me once or twice, like she sensed I was on to her, but she never said a word. Then came the night of the sting. Daniels parked an unmarked vehicle down the block. Another agent positioned across the street. The test envelope was in place. I stayed inside, pretending to watch TV, though my eyes never left the window. My pulse hammered with anticipation. At 9:17 p.m., it happened. Karen strolled casually down the sidewalk, glancing over her shoulder like a thief who thought she was invisible. She stopped at the mailbox cluster, opened her compartment, then slid her hand into someone else's slot. Seconds later, I saw her pocket the envelope. Daniel's radio crackled. "Target has it." And that's when everything changed. The moment Karen pocketed that test envelope, everything shifted from suspicion to certainty. The agents weren't guessing anymore. They had her. But instead of swooping in immediately, Inspector Daniels wanted to watch her next moves. From my window, I could see Karen walking briskly back toward her house. She didn't run, but there was a stiffness in her shoulders, the kind of tension that screams guilt. Daniels and his team stayed back, keeping her under surveillance. "We need her to cross the line fully," he whispered over the radio. "One envelope is enough for probable cause, but a pattern seals the case." The following night, they repeated the operation. Another tracker, another delivery, and once again, like clockwork, Karen appeared after dark, checking not just her own mailbox but rifling through others. This time, she took 2 envelopes. By the time she slipped inside her front door, Daniels was grinning. "That's it. We've got her." The next step was a controlled confrontation. Daniels explained that in cases like this, the goal isn't just to retrieve stolen mail, it's to prove intent. And Karen's behavior had shown exactly that. But he also suspected she wasn't acting on impulse. He believed she might have been doing this for weeks, maybe months, targeting residents she didn't like. Suddenly, all those missing bills and lost packages from neighbors made chilling sense. The inspectors secured a search warrant. That night, they briefed me on what would happen the following morning. A team would arrive quietly, knock on Karen's door, and serve the warrant. If she resisted, they were prepared. If she confessed, even better. I barely slept. The thought of federal agents swarming our quiet street made my head spin. At 7 a.m., it began. 3 unmarked cars pulled up silently. Daniels and 2 officers approached Karen's front porch while another agent circled back. I watched from my living room window, heart pounding. The knock was firm, official. A pause. Then Karen opened the door, wearing a robe, her hair messy. She looked annoyed, like they were Girl Scouts trying to sell her cookies too early in the morning. But when Daniels flashed his badge and announced, "Federal Postal Inspector, we have a warrant to search the premises," the color drained from her face. She stammered, demanded to know what this was about. Daniels was calm but unyielding. "Mail theft is a federal offense, ma'am. Step aside." And, incredibly, almost unbelievably, Karen tried to slam the door. Bad move. The agents pushed forward. Within seconds, they were inside. And what they discovered made every missing letter and every frustrated neighbor's story come crashing together. The air in the neighborhood felt electric as the inspectors moved through Karen's house. I stayed back, watching from my porch, unable to tear my eyes away. Inside, muffled voices echoed as agents opened drawers, checked closets, and searched every corner. Daniels later told me that in cases like this, stolen mail often piles up. It's rarely just a few missing letters. Within minutes, one of the agents emerged holding a cardboard box, then another, and another. They set them down on the front lawn. My jaw dropped. Each one was filled to the brim with envelopes, magazines, and packages, mail that clearly didn't belong to Karen. Some were torn open, others still sealed. It was like a paper graveyard. Months of theft stacked in front of her house for all the neighbors to see. Daniels flipped through the evidence methodically, reading names aloud. Smith, Johnson, Rivera, every other box belonged to someone on our street. People started gathering outside, whispering, pointing, realizing their missing mail hadn't just been lost in the system. It had been sitting inside Karen's living room the whole time. Karen stood on the porch, arms crossed, sputtering excuses. "I was just holding them for safekeeping," she shouted. "The post office is unreliable. I was protecting the neighborhood." Her voice cracked under the weight of her own lies. Nobody believed her. Not anymore. Daniels didn't raise his voice. He simply turned to her and said, "Ma'am, you are under arrest for mail theft, obstruction, and tampering with federal property." The sound of handcuffs clicking shut was almost surreal. This wasn't a scene from television, it was happening right here, in broad daylight, in front of all of us. The neighbors gasped. Some even clapped quietly. Years of her controlling behavior, her petty complaints, her smug superiority, it had all come crashing down in an instant. And now she was being led, red-faced and furious, into the back of a federal vehicle. Afterward, Daniels reassured us that the stolen mail would be sorted and returned. It would take time, but justice had been served. He thanked me for reaching out, reminding me that the system works best when regular citizens speak up. "You'd be surprised how many of these cases start with one observant neighbor," he said. As the cars pulled away, I looked around at the faces of my community. People smiled at one another, relief written across their expressions. We weren't just neighbors anymore, we were a neighborhood again. And the woman who thought she could control us all had finally been held accountable. All because of one missing package. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more wild neighborhood dramas, don't forget to hit that like button, drop a comment with your thoughts, and of course, subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Your support really helps me keep bringing you these crazy real-life stories.